Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. Now, tonight, y'all, I want to teach you guys how to overcome writer's block as a poet. Now, writer's block is the one thing that all of us writers despise because it kind of kills our creative flow and our creative juices when it comes to the visual and, lyrical expression of poetry. And I say that to say, as a poet, you depend on your lyricism, you depend on your creativity. Because when crafting a proper poetry piece, you need as much creativity as possible because you're doing it on the whim sometimes. You don't really have an outline, as you usually would. I said usually. Don't pay no attention to that. You don't have a outline as you usually would. Sometimes you're just in your car going to work, or you're picking your kids up and you think about a poetry piece and you're listening to maybe the snap of an instrumental. You hear that snap is the snare, because some beats have a snap, some has a some have a snare kind of like that. Or you might hear a light. I'm gonna use my pen here to make some noise. You might have a snare that's that light, you know what I mean? And from that tap, you might get some creative flow going. You're like, all right, cool. I'm listening to this one, Polo G song, or say for instance you like listening to old school music. I got this one Lil Jon song I'm listening to, or I have this one Young Jeezy track I'm listening to, or I have this one Fabio Foreign beat I'm listening to, and it's really catching my attention. And it might not always be about the lyrics. It could be solely about the lyrical wordplay. But here's where, you know, um, writer's block comes in. Sorry, it's a bit of a late night. It's been a busy day, so bear with me on this one. But anyway, this is where, writer's block comes in. You have this amazing idea. You have this amazing concept. You have this amazing outline for this poetry piece you thought of on a whim. Writer's block comes in. You don't have a mid. You don't have an end to your poetry piece. So that's where the disruption of writer's block comes in. And it kind of sucks. It really does suck because, you know, writer's block can kill your flow for about 2 to 3 weeks sometimes, maybe a month or more. I know writer's block, I had a case of writer's block that set me back for at least 2 months straight. And I'm being realistic with you guys. I'm not even making up no exaggerated points or anything like that. I'm being honest with you guys. I had a spell of writer's block. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that, guys. My mic cut off. Anyway, I had a spell of writer's block kick me off course for about 2 months straight. It sucked because I was at a point in my life where I was writing 4 or 5 poetry pieces a day. 4 or 5 poetry pieces a day. I kept it flowing. I kept it going. I kept it going. I kept it going. And all of a sudden, July 2022 hits. And it's the third annual celebration of my podcast. And I was trying to come up with some creative ideas like, oh man, how can I commemorate the third year of celebrating this in particular podcast? And I was shooting a blank for an hour straight. Next thing you know, 4 o'clock in the evening rolls by because I had the day off. I had the day off from work, so I had all day to think. And I was thinking of ideas because I like doing the podcast during the late night, hours of the evening, because it allows me to relax like I am now and be able to perform spoken word at a slower pace than I would during the cafe morning segment of the podcast. But anyway, that's another time for another discussion. So here I am, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm shooting a blank. I'm like, oh man, I can't come up with a poetry piece. listen to lo-fi track after lo-fi track, YouTube channel after YouTube channel, looking for instrumentals, looking for inspirational beats. You know, I'm listening to inspirational orchestra music. I'm listening to lo-fi music. I'm listening to hip hop, you know, boom bap instrumentals, and I'm shooting an absolute blank. I couldn't put anything on my creative canvas. So I was like, man, you know, 7 o'clock in the evening rolls by, shooting a blank. 10 o'clock in the evening rolls by. I come up with a title. This is how bad writer's block can really affect you. I was only able to come up with a title. And I had to pray. I said, Father God, I really want to do this podcast episode, but I can't seem to think of an idea. I thought there was something wrong with it. There was nothing wrong. I made a previous video here on the channel, and I spoke about how I discussed and performed every type of poetry piece there was, from romance to everyday poetry to lazy day poetry to seasonal poetry to holiday poetry to Christian poems to nature poems to musical poems. I was like, all right, cool. I think I'm at a point where I'm all poemed out. I felt like I bottomed out at that point. But that wasn't entirely the case. That was writer's block. So, would it help me get through that period? Because I couldn't celebrate, you know, the podcast on July 19, 2022. I had to celebrate it July 20th, 2022. I stepped away. I allowed that writer's block to just, you know, shut me down for a little bit. I started getting into my video game. I started playing it for a little bit. And at the time, I was playing Genshin Impact, and I was just playing it, just bored, you know, and jumping between that and Need for Speed Underground on my cell phone, and playing those two games just to get my mindset away from consistently writing. And no, I'm not dense. You know, I know that playing a mobile game can absorb so much of your time that as a poet, it can, you know, kind of shut you down if you allow yourself to get caught up in open world games or sandbox games for too long. There's nothing wrong with playing mobile games. I love mobile games. I love video games in general. I love console, PC, and mobile games. But if you spend too much time on that in particular thing as a writer, you're not going to want to, you know, write any poems or write any books, you know, because you'll be so distracted by, for example, if you're into the God of War franchise like I am, Mass Effect, Genshin Impact, Tower of Fantasy, well, not that much of Tower of Fantasy, Punishing Gray Raven, Honkai Star Rail, Gran Turismo, GTA, the NBA 2K series, all kind of, you know, franchise games like that, and sandbox games like that. You know, those are the type of games I do play. But anyway, I allowed myself to just step away for a little bit and play my little video games, and then as I reached the Storm Terror's Lair stage of Genshin Impact, right? And that OST, which stands for Original Soundtrack, it was so solemn, so sad, but yet so beautiful. And I was just, like, I had my character just stand there on that mountain in front of the Storm Terror's Lair for about maybe 35, 45 minutes. As I was listening to the OST, it was allowing me to write and write and write and write and write. And lo and behold, I never knew that was the inspiration I needed to get away for a little bit from writing, because I became a slave to it for a little bit and I didn't know it. Like, I wasn't answering texts, I wasn't answering calls, I wasn't, you know, responding to emails or anything. I was just writing for so long, for, you know, 2 years straight. I would go to work, come home, you know, pay my bills, you know, feed myself, of course, take a shower, go to work and all that, talk to family and friends every once in a while. But besides all that, I was mainly writing poetry straight. Am I saying writing consistently is bad? No, it's a beautiful thing. If you have that energy and effort to consistently write, then kudos to you, my friend. You definitely have a gift for writing. But As for me, that case of writer's block hit, and I was just shooting a blank, and I couldn't think of anything. So what helped me was getting away. Now I'm not going to sit back and say, "Oh yeah, it was just mobile games." No, it wasn't just the mobile games. It was just allowing myself to mentally escape my pen and paper for just a bit. Because I love writing. I love writing poetry. My wife and my family, my friends can tell you I love writing poetry. I love reading anyone else's poetry as well. That's why I used to tell people on my podcast, feel free to email me your poetry pieces. I'll read them here on the podcast for you and shout you out and everything like that. And that's when I started having guests come onto the show, and I let them, instead of them email me poetry pieces for me to read on their behalf, I allowed them to read their own in particular podcast, podcast, in particular poetry pieces on the podcast. So it, you know, it allowed me to hear their poems from their perspectives, from their point of view, straight from the source. And it was amazing. So that's why I had to allow myself, after doing that consistently 2-3 years, that's why I diverged a little bit into life, love, relationships, advice type topics, because I started to get bored with it. And I thought to myself, the moment I get bored with it, not only is writer's block going to, stop me from furthering my career path in poetry and literature, but it'll be boredom. And the moment you get bored with something, you're not going to want to do it no more, no matter how passionate you were from the beginning. So I allowed myself to get that little break, playing on video games. And I heard that Storm Terror's Lair OST, it definitely struck me. And for all the Genshin Impact fans out there, you know exactly the OST I'm talking about. That and it's another OST. I'm trying to think. I had it on the tip of my tongue. Dragon Spine. That's what I was thinking about. Sorry, I was about to say the Winter Mountain, and I was like, dang, I can't just say the Winter Mountain. Then everybody gonna be like, oh, you never played Genshin a day in your life. It's called Dragon Spine. Yeah, Dragon Spine's OST is definitely a solemn, sad track, but it definitely is refreshing as a poet to listen to. I love video game OSTs. I've been listening to OSTs since Kingdom Hearts 1, and since Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I listened to OSTs all the way up to Final Fantasy on the PlayStation 1, to Kingdom Hearts on the PlayStation 2. And I just love tuning into OSTs because some of these video game franchises have some really amazing OSTs. And it's the games you least expect. Like Shenmue on the Dreamcast, every Final Fantasy, Lord, woo. I can't name a Final Fantasy like OST that really doesn't strike me as amazing. Just like a lot of Gran Turismos, from the garage to the racing tracks to when you take the car to get an oil change, all of their OSTs are amazing. So that's what helps me get into the groove, of writing. Recently, I wrote a few poetry pieces to Vapid's Gran Turismo OSTs, and that's what inspired me to write as well. But once again, if you are struggling with writer's block, ladies and gentlemen, take a break for just a bit. Don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it crush you. Don't let it weigh you down. Just allow your mind to relax. You're going to get that poetry piece done. You're going to get it recorded. You're going to get it written. You're going to get that book published. Just relax your mind. Don't overwork yourself. That's something I did for a couple years, and I almost regretted it. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this video helped you out. And if you enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button. if you are a fan of OSTs and video games, hey, smash that thumbs up button and comment in the comment section below which video game OST you enjoyed the most. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I love you guys. I thank you all for tuning in. If you really enjoyed this content, subscribe to the channel for more helpful tips. Anyway, I love y'all, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.